for watching video 4 of my Vlogfolio, my demonstration of all of my learning in graduate school. In this video, we're going to talk about all of the conferences that I've attended and presented at in my time here in the CSSA program. So without further ado, I want to jump in by talking about actually the most recent conference that I attended and presented at. It was the Regional NACADA Conference. It took place in Portland, Oregon, so just up the road from here. And I presented with a friend and cohort mate and fellow CSSA student who is also getting the same teaching certificate as me, Catherine Leibel. We presented about some of the things that we were learning in both of our programs, so both the CSSA program and the teaching certificate. I will be spending an entire video later on talking about the teaching certificate and all of the things that I've learned in that program and how they relate to the CSSA competencies. But I wanted to touch a little bit on this presentation because it was a really great way for me to integrate some of the learning I was doing. NACADA, as I mentioned in a previous video, is a professional organization related to academic advising. It's the global community for academic advising. And this is actually an organization that I have some past involvement with. When I lived in Washington, D.C., I was part of a different region. I was part of Region 2, the Atlantic region, and I helped plan one of the regional conferences in Washington, D.C. I was on the steering committee and I worked with another woman, and we were actually the proposal co-chairs of the steering committee. So we set out a call for proposals. We also set out a call for volunteers to read all of those proposals, and then I read about 115 proposals that were submitted for that conference, and ultimately we picked the ones that were presented. And that was a really great introduction into the inner workings of NACADA. I had attended one other regional conference prior to that. In 2014, I attended the regional conference in Morgantown, West Virginia. So that was my first time attending a NACADA conference, and then 2 years later, I helped organize the regional conference in Washington, D.C., and then 2 years after that, I attended and presented at the NACADA here in Portland. So this was a really kind of lovely full circle experience because I had been on the flip side of reading all of the proposals and selecting them, and now in grad school, my proposal was one of the ones that was actually selected. So our presentation was called The Andragogical Advisor, the Intersection of Advising and Teaching in Higher Education. And we had this idea to integrate all of the learning that we were doing related to our teaching certificate, and specifically the adult learning theories that we were learning, and how those theories could be related to the work of an academic advisor. So andragogy is one of the theories that we talked about. It's originally developed by Malcolm Knowles. We also talked about self-directed learning, the theory of self-directed learning. This was originally developed by Gerald Groh. And we related these two adult learning models to all of the ways that advisors can act as teachers. And we thought this was a great way to sort of showcase all of the learning we did, and the presentation went really well, in my opinion. We were actually very pleased when we arrived at NACADA because there were these bookmarks everywhere that said, "Advising is teaching." And we thought, oh, that's so great. That's exactly the case that we're hoping to make. So it wasn't obviously an original idea to consider advising as a type of teaching, but we really enjoyed being able to relate those two adult learning theories to the work of advising. Another conference that I attended and presented at was the OSU Leadership Conference, and I did this in my first year of graduate school. I also co-presented with another friend and cohort mate of mine, Sylvia Hall, and we presented about a social justice toolkit, and we tried to put together a kind of group of activities and resources and tools that facilitators could use to make sure that they were creating socially just environments in the spaces that they facilitate. Now, this conference is hosted at Oregon State University, and it's specifically geared towards student attendees. So we tried to focus our content toward people who might be students who might be leading campus organizations or have some kind of leadership role in another organization on campus, and how they could help facilitate meetings and conversations and group learning in a way that was still focused on social justice. So, a lot of the things that we talked about were related to developing community standards and making sure that you're taking into account all of the experiences and identities that are in the room and acknowledging and celebrating those things. And the reason that this conference is something I want to talk about is because we spent a lot of that presentation discussing community standards and how important they are for creating a socially just space. And then, just a few months after we made that presentation, we were assigned an article for a social justice retreat that was focused on kind of tearing down these ideas that we had about community standards and common guidelines. And so this was written by two authors, Sensoy and D'Angelo. We had read a book for our multicultural affairs class by them. And this article was called Respect Differences, Challenging the Common Guidelines in Social Justice Education. And I'll put the link to this article in the description, but it basically goes through and discusses how common guidelines or community standards can actually be creating a less socially just environment. And this is important because we were challenged to then think about the presentation we had given and think about how we had encouraged, the creation of these community guidelines and these common standards, and we actually retooled our toolkit and submitted a separate presentation kind of critiquing our own former presentation. We submitted our second one to a NASPA conference, and it ultimately wasn't selected, but the thinking and the process that went into going through our initial presentation and then going through the edits that we made to it based on this Sensoy and D'Angelo article really got me thinking about social justice in an even deeper way than I had been before. And so that was another conference that I attended. And then the last one that I attended was actually that NASPA conference that I submitted a presentation for with Sylvia, and it wasn't selected, but we both still attended the conference. It was in Honolulu, Hawaii, and this was a NASPA regional conference. NASPA is another professional organization in the student affairs field. And this conference was really meaningful for me because I attended that with about 6 other people who are in my CSSA cohort, and I got to experience that conference with them. But I also got to meet so many other people in our field and people who are doing really important work. And I got to attend really inspirational speakers and panels and presentations. And it was really this NASPA conference that reminded me the importance of attending conferences and the importance of kind of engaging in my own professional development and looking for the experiences that I want. And so, I learned from all of these conferences that you can get a lot of energy from other people who are attending conferences with you. It can sort of revitalize your interest in the field. It can open your eyes to new thoughts, new experiences. It's obviously a great way to network. And I knew that from conferences I had attended in the past, but I think attending these conferences as a grad student made me realize that my network and my connections were quite strong already, just simply from being a Montanan, being a student at OSU, attending different events. I was able to find connections with people, and networking seemed a lot less scary once I had attended these conferences. And I finally kind of found a community, and I found that I enjoyed talking to colleagues and friends about these things outside of, the office. And that was very important for me as well. So, looking at the competencies that are covered in this particular experience, I think primarily it's the fifth competency, the developing professional. As I was mentioning before, I was able to kind of find community and engage in my own process of sort of figuring out what I want to do. I've also learned by attending these conferences that, I attending them and meeting other people and building relationships with people in the field are something that I value in my own professional development. And this has also helped me to really think critically about the work that I'm doing in my job and in my classes, and how I can make those meaningful for other people in the field, and then how I can take what other people are learning and apply those to my own work. So this has been uh, the video focusing on conferences. Thank you for watching. In my next video, I'm going to talk about the internships and projects that I've done while I've been in graduate school. And I will talk to you later. Thank you.